Hey there. Welcome back to another peaceful evening together. Tonight's story begins not with a grand event or a sweeping romance, but with something small, something quiet, a drawer that sticks when you pull it too fast, a bit of velvet that's been folded the same way for decades, and inside-eyed a gold watch that hasn't ticked in over 50 years. It's Edith's story, and it begins on an ordinary morning when she's cleaning out her dresser of those slow tasks you do when the house is quiet and the sun comes in soft through the curtains. The kind of day when memory doesn't knock, it just steps in, uninvited but welcome. Before we begin, if these stories bring you comfort, I'd love it if you'd like the video and subscribe. And maybe, if you feel like sharing, tell me in the comments, is there something you keep? Something that isn't worth much in money, but holds more than you could explain? Now, settle in. Let the hush of the evening find you. Let your thoughts slow to the rhythm of your breath, and drift with me into tonight's story one. Not about time passing, but about the things that never truly leave us. The drawer stuck, the way it always did. It had done that since they moved into the house back when George was still alive and the kids were just out of school. Edith gave it the usual nudge with her hip, then tugged it open with a sigh. She wasn't in a rush. She rarely was these days. There was a kind of peace and slowness in letting the day take its time. She was just trying to make a little room, reorganize, tidy. That's what she told herself. But really, she'd been feeling something lately. A kind of tug, not urgent, not loud, just present. Like a thought you keep forgetting and remembering again. A name that hovers on the edge of a dream. The scarf drawer gave way with a little creak, and inside beneath a pair of gloves and a silk square she hadn't worn since her daughter's wedding was a bundle of blue velvet. Her fingers paused. She hadn't touched it in years, but she knew, even before she unwrapped it. The watch. Small, gold, smooth around the edges, where the years had worn it soft. It hadn't worked in decades, but it was whole. It looked exactly the way it had the last time she saw it on his wrist. John's wrist, not George's. This was from before, long before. She held it gently in her palm, like a whisper, like a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. 7:42. That's where it had stopped. It never moved again after the letter came. She didn't wind it. She didn't need to. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed, the watch cradled in her lap, and let herself fall back not into sadness, but into memory. And just like that, the present softened. The years folded inward, and Edith was 17 again. It was the summer before everything changed. The kind of summer where time feels like it stretches long just for you, where every evening smells like cut grass and the world hums with promise. Edith was 17, working part-time at the library and spending her afternoons reading under the big elm tree behind the school. The same spot every time, the same shade, the same breeze that carried whispers from the past and invitations from the future. That's where John first spoke to her. He had passed her before more than once, a year older, quiet, known for showing up early to everything. Church, baseball practice, even tests. He had this old soul calm to him, like someone who had already figured out what mattered and didn't see the point in rushing what didn't. "Is that Austin?" he asked, stopping just far enough away that she could choose to ignore him if she wanted to. She didn't. She looked up, blinked against the sunlight, and smiled. "Bronte, actually." He nodded. like that made perfect sense. Figures. She raised an eyebrow. Figures? He shrugged, stepping a little closer. You don't look like someone who needs rescuing. And that was it. A beginning. They met under that tree 3 times a week after that. Sometimes with books, sometimes with lemonade, sometimes with nothing but quiet in each other. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even romantic at first. But it was steady, honest, and that made it feel real. John had a way of listening that made silence feel safe. He didn't fill gaps in conversation just to prove he was there. He let them breathe, and slowly, so did Edith. He asked questions no one else asked. What do you want your life to feel like? What sound makes you feel at home? If you could hold on to one moment forever, which one would you pick? She answered them all, sometimes seriously, sometimes with laughter. But every answer made her feel like he saw her not just as a girl in a summer dress, but as someone with a whole world inside her. And then, one day, he brought the watch. It wasn't wrapped. It wasn't even new. Just a small gold pocket watch, with a thin chain and a little dent near the edge. I want you to have this, he said, holding it out like it was something sacred. It was my grandfather's. He gave it to me when I turned 15. Said it was for people who showed up on time. But I'm giving it to you, because you make time feel different. She blinked, unsure what to say. So he added, you don't have to keep it forever, just until you forget why I gave it to you. She didn't forget, not even now. They didn't call it love. Not then, but it was something. A slow unfolding, a comfort, a tether. She wore the watch tucked into her coat pocket. Every time she reached for it, she felt a little steadier, like she was holding a piece of something unspoken and essential. And every Friday, they sat beneath the elm tree, even when the air turned cooler and school picked up again. They talked about future she's possible enlistment, her possible scholarship. They didn't promise anything, but they stayed. And sometimes, that's enough. When John left for basic training, it wasn't with tears or a dramatic goodbye, just a quiet walk to the bus station, hands clasped, their shadows stretching long behind them in the early morning sun. He handed her one last note folded, not sealed, and kissed the top of her head. Write me? He asked. Every week, she promised. And she did. The first letter was careful, polite almost. A recap of the weather, her classes, a short poem she found tucked in the back of a book at the library. He wrote back with drawings in the margins, little trees, a pair of shoes, a steaming mug. The second letter was longer. She told him about the elm tree, how it looked different now, how the light didn't quite fall the same way when he wasn't there. She mentioned the watch, how she checked it, not for the time, but for the comfort, as if it could whisper back to her. His reply came 3 days later. I miss the way you pause before speaking, like your words are handmade. The letters kept coming, every week, then every other, then less. It wasn't intentional. Life had its rhythm, and sometimes distance stretches time in strange ways. But she still looked for the envelopes with his handwriting, still checked the mailbox, like it might hold more than mail. The town moved slowly that year. Autumn came with crisp mornings and the smell of wood smoke. Edith walked home from the library beneath a sky that always seemed a little too wide. She watched neighbors rake leaves and children ride bikes with squeaky wheels. The world didn't pause for her missing. She didn't expect it to. Still, some days, she paused anyway. At the elm tree, in front of the mirror, with the watch in her hand. Sometimes, she'd imagine him reading her letters in a bunk lit by a flickering bulb, maybe smiling at a line she'd rewritten 3 times before sending. Other times, she pictured him on long runs or drills, shouting over wind and dust, holding her words somewhere deeper than a pocket. She started writing smaller things. Moments. A dream she had about a snowstorm. The sound the floor made when she stepped near the hallway vent. A song that reminded her of the way he nodded when he agreed with something silently. She didn't always get a reply, but she kept writing. The town posted a bulletin board at the post office with updates from locals who had gone overseas. Names, locations, heard from dates. John's name was on it. Until it wasn't. No one said anything. No one needed to. Her parents watched her gently, carefully, like she might tip over without warning. Her mother made extra tea. Her father sharpened all the pencils in the house one day unprompted. She still walked to the mailbox. Still waited. Even when her hands grew tired from writing nothing new. Even when the watch in her coat pocket felt more like weight than comfort. Some silences are heavy. Some are final. And some stretch so long, they become a kind of company. The letter arrived in spring, postmarked weeks earlier, yellowed slightly from travel. The handwriting was unmistakable, careful, slanted left, the way John always wrote when he was thinking deeply. She recognized it instantly. It didn't say much. No date, no location, just a few lines, enough to close a chapter without saying so. Dearest Edith, if you're reading this, then time's moved forward without me. That's okay. That's how it goes. I wanted to say thank you for every word, every pause, every quiet thing you shared with me. Your letters were more than company. They were light. They made me feel like I still belonged somewhere, like I wasn't vanishing. I hope you do everything you dreamed of. Keep the watch. Let it remind you of how time sometimes stops, not because it's broken, but because it wants us to listen. Yours, always, John. She read it once. Then again. Then she didn't read it at all. Just held it. Saturday, on the floor by the window, with the spring light stretching long across the rug. The elm outside had just started to bud again. She didn't cry. Not loudly. Not the kind of grief that breaks. Just the kind that bends you inward. The kind that makes the air taste different. The kind that doesn't need a sound to be heard. She took the watch from her coat pocket that night, set it on her nightstand, stared at it until the numbers blurred. 7:42. She imagined him looking at the same face of time, somewhere far away, once. Maybe as he folded the letter, maybe as he thought of her sitting under the elm with a book in her lap and her knees tucked to her chest. The next day, she folded the letter and placed it in the back of her journal, the one with the fabric cover and ribbon bookmark. She never read it again. She didn't need to. Some messages arrive in full the first time. She wrote no reply. There was no return address. And if there had been, she might not have used it. Some goodbyes ask for silence. So she gave it. But she didn't let go. She carried the watch. Moved it from her coat to her dresser drawer. wrapped it in the same blue velvet from a scarf she never wore, tucked it away like a secret she was keeping, not from the world, but for herself. She went back to the library, back to long walks, back to life, the way it continues in the soft aftermath of something you can't explain. People asked less and less. Time wore down the edges of the questions, but the watch remained. And when she passed the drawer where it rested, her hand always paused, just for a moment, like it was brushing the hem of something sacred. Edith didn't plan to fall in love again, and in many ways, she never truly did not like before. But life has a rhythm, one that doesn't ask permission before continuing. And the heart, even when bruised, doesn't stay broken. It reshapes. It makes room. She met George 3 years later, not under an elm tree or with letters, but at the hardware store. She was trying to fix a leaky faucet. He was buying birdseed. He offered a suggestion. She made a joke. He laughed. It was simple, unremarkable, and quietly it began. George was a gentle man, tall, with a beard that never quite behaved, and a laugh that came easier than words. He didn't ask her about her past. She didn't offer. He liked crossword puzzles and homemade pie, played the trumpet in a small-town band, and whistled while mowing the lawn. They married after a year of Sunday dinners and Tuesday walks, moved into a little house with yellow curtains and a tree swing George built from scratch. They raised 2 children, built traditions, shared inside jokes, and never once did Edith mention the watch in the drawer. Not out of secrecy, but because some memories are private not by force, but by nature. Like sunlight through old glass meant to be witnessed alone. George filled her life with steadiness. He was a man of presence, always there, always kind. He held her hand in the delivery room, taught their son how to drive, danced with her in the kitchen to old jazz records. He aged beside her with grace. And when he passed, quietly in his sleep, with a book still open in his lap, she mourned him fully. Not as a substitute, not as a comparison, but as someone she'd grown into. Their love was not dramatic. It was daily, and it held her just as surely as the memory of that summer beneath the elm once had. Years passed. The house grew quieter. Children moved out, then back in for visits. Grandchildren were born. The swing rotted slightly on one side, and Edith let it stay. Said it leaned just the right way now. And still, in her dresser, the drawer stuck. Still, beneath the scarves and soft gloves, the blue velvet bundle waited. She rarely opened it, but she never forgot it was there. Because there are things we carry across lifetimes not to keep them alive, but to honor that they lived. It was an ordinary Tuesday, the kind where the air smells like lemon cleaner, and the only sound is the distant buzz of a neighbor's lawnmower. Edith was straightening up her bedroom, not out of necessity, but out of habit. At 91, movement came slower, but she still found comfort in the little tasks: dusting, folding, tending to the corners of her life. She opened the drawer, the one that always stuck, pulled gently. It gave way. Scarves, a missing earring, a pack of tissues, the ordinary clutter of a well-lived life. And beneath it, blue velvet. Her hands hovered. She hadn't touched it in years. Not since George passed. Maybe even longer. She sat on the edge of the bed, unwrapped it slowly, and there it was. The watch. The gold dulled slightly, but still whole. still warm, as if memory gave it its own quiet heat. The hands frozen at 7:42. The chain curled like it had never moved. She traced its face with her finger. Didn't cry. Didn't sigh. Just held it. It didn't feel like grief. Not now. It felt like presence. Like something that had waited patiently. Not to be remembered, but to remind. She sat there for a long time. Let the years drift in and out. Let the light shift across the room. She could see the elm tree again. Hear the low hum of a trumpet from the backyard. Smell the cinnamon rolls her granddaughter baked last Christmas. Everything folded in on itself. Not lost, just layered. That evening, she made tea, carried it to the porch, watched the sky shift from blue to lilac. In her lap, the watch, not ticking, not needing to. She didn't need to wind it, didn't want to, because sometimes stillness is sacred. Sometimes time doesn't have to move to mean something. It was an ordinary Tuesday, the kind where the air smells like lemon cleaner, and the only sound is the distant buzz of a neighbor's lawnmower. Edith was straightening up her bedroom, not out of necessity, but out of habit. At 91, movement came slower, but she still found comfort in the little tasks: dusting, folding, tending to the corners of her life. She opened the drawer, the one that always stuck, pulled gently. It gave way. Scarves, a missing earring, a pack of tissues, the ordinary clutter of a well-lived life, and beneath it, blue velvet. Her hands hovered. She hadn't touched it in years, not since George passed, maybe even longer. She sat on the edge of the bed, unwrapped it slowly, and there it was. The watch. The gold dulled slightly, but was still whole, still warm, as if memory gave it its quiet heat. The hands froze at 7:42. The chain curled like it had never moved. She traced its face with her finger. Didn't cry. Didn't sigh. Just held it. It didn't feel like grief. Not now. It felt like presence. Like something that had waited patiently. Not to be remembered, but to remind. She sat there for a long time. Let the years drift in and out. Let the light shift across the room. She could see the elm tree again. Hear the low hum of a trumpet from the backyard. Smell the cinnamon rolls her granddaughter baked last Christmas. Everything folded in on itself. Not lost, just layered. That evening, she made tea, carried it to the porch, watched the sky shift from blue to lilac. In her lap, the watch, not ticking, not needing to. She didn't need to wind it, didn't want to, because sometimes stillness is sacred. Sometimes time doesn't have to move to mean something.